Welcome back to Stratford, everyone. Average Cubs fan says he wants a naval base in the city, and a lot of you seem to agree with him. So that's what we're going to be doing this episode. I'm Tim Eister. Sit back, relax, hit that like button, and let's get into it. All jokes aside, a naval base was already in the pipeline for the city. No kidding, I was actually going to build a naval base at some point in the future. I just didn't know when or where. But seeing that there's some interest in this, I figured I would just build it now. So I began scouring the map to find a suitable location for a medium-sized naval base, I would say. And I'm settling on this little island right outside Eastport. Well, it's almost an island. We have a tiny little sliver of land connecting it to the mainland. But I think this is a pretty suitable and strategic location due to its proximity to downtown of both Stratford and Eastport. This little bay inlet looks like it would be quite sheltered from the weather, but also it has super easy access out into the Atlantic Ocean, which means that we can quickly deploy ships wherever they may need to go. So let's jump into this. We're going to first start out by building the main infrastructure leading into this island, such as rail and roads. But before we do that, we are going to have to do a little bit of terraforming just to be able to build out a proper harbor area to house our boats. So I'm just gonna flatten out, not this whole island, but at least part of it, right up to about here, and then we'll flatten all of this out. And now what I want to do is I want to tap into this rail line that leads to the exterior of the map. And I'm going to build an overpass above this road leading into the naval base. And I'm just going to flatten out some of these hills, get those out of the way because we're going to build our cargo transfer station. So not only is this going to look cool, but it's going to be functional as well. And we'll have a double train track coming into here. All right, so we've got the main rail line coming into this place. And now we're going to tee off this road. And now, typically military installations don't allow just any old Joe Schmo to enter the premises. So what we're gonna do is build a sort of toll booth, but not really a toll booth. There's going to be a kind of a security checkpoint. And to do that, we're going to go in our water menu, scroll down here to the small port entrance. And actually, to make this a little easier on myself, I'm going to flatten out a little bit of terrain around this. And then we're going to disable snapping. And we'll have our security checkpoint right here. And this is also going to serve as the base for a lot of the logistical things that will be included in this, such as storage, warehouses, those kind of things. And you know what? I find that road was kind of ugly. Let's take our time and make something that looks nice. We're going to use our diagonal road tool. And then instead of having a singular 2-lane road, we're going to have two 1-lane roads just like this. And then we'll remove these bunch of crosswalks. There, that definitely looks a lot better. And you know what? We can do better than that even. Let's do a 2-lane road like this. So that'll make this into, well, I'm gonna make a right turn lane. Oh crap, there's a median in the middle of this, but okay, well that's fine. It still looks cool. All right, there we go. So we got our two entrances into the base. We have rail and road coming in. I'm now going to start working on the actual harbor area. So we're going to work from the interior and work our way outwards. And there's a few buildings that I want to include in this build, such as, we go into our industrial signature buildings. I want to build a seafarers shipyards. So this is kind of like a civil shipbuilding company, it looks like, but it definitely looks very militaristic. So we're going to include this in this area, and I think honestly, if I add this right about right here where it is now, I think that would look pretty cool, although it might get in the way of the roads. So I'm just going to reclaim a tiny bit of land. We'll straighten out this little chunk of land. And let's try that again, see if we can squeeze this in. And poof, there we go. That honestly looks super cool. Now, one thing I'm going to do is actually reverse reclaim land because, well, this bay, as large as it looks, is a little tight for what I'm about to plop in just a moment. So we're going to reverse reclaim land. Here, let me increase my brush strength. It'll make this a bit easier. So we're going to shrink the island. And we're going to dredge out some material. Not too much. Maybe to about here. And then what I want to do is make sort of like another diagonal inverse pier like this. And this has got to be relatively large. And we'll go ahead and we're going to remove all these trees. I'll actually go ahead and remove all of the trees from the island. And we'll go ahead and replace some of them at the end. All right, so we're going to start off with this. I think that should do it. And what is going to be plopped inside of this little inlet is none other than a big old Nimitz class aircraft carrier. And look at that. It just barely fits. I might have to widen that out a little bit more. But let's go ahead and plop it. And I think I'm going to have to raise it up a little bit. It looks like it's sitting a bit low in the water. And it looks like the water line would be, well, right about here. And look at this behemoth. Now, I'm not sure how accurate the scaling is on this, but if this is accurate, just look how huge this is relative to the rest of the city. This is crazy. But it looks absolutely massive, and it kind of makes sense now as to what I was saying. Like, this bay looks relatively small now that this massive aircraft carrier is sitting in it. All right, so what I'm going to do is widen out this little inlet a bit further out. And actually, I don't have to widen it out too much. I'm actually going to build this back into place. Because we actually want this ship to be docked as close as we can get it to the actual dock. But man, that looks so cool. All right, and now what I'm going to do is build out an actual pier out into the bay. A little something like this, I think, should do. Oh, that looks... Maybe we'll shorten it out. That doesn't leave a lot of room for this massive ship to turn inside the bay. So I think I'm going to shorten it back out to maybe about here. Yeah, I think that should be fine. That boat should be able to make this turn. We also have an oil platform kind of floating right in the middle of this bay. I'm going to leave it there. But naturally, I think we would probably rather have this elsewhere to leave all of this available space for the naval vessels. But that's totally fine. All right, and I think this is good to get us started. We have a couple of piers. Now, from what I've seen, now I have zero experience in or around any naval bases. The closest naval base to me is in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I think this is what I'm going to use mostly for inspiration for this build because, well, as far as naval bases go, this is going to be a relatively tiny base. If we compare what I'm going to build today to something like Norfolk, Virginia, I mean, this is kind of peanuts. A naval base of this size would never carry something as huge as an aircraft carrier, most likely. But, you know, we're kind of stretching reality here. I mean, this is a pretty cool thing to plop in anybody's city. So I'm now going to jump into time-lapse mode. We're going to build out the actual piers. We're going to plop down the harbor walls, all that kind of stuff. So let's do it. Let's go into time-lapse mode. And just briefly here, I'm going to do a bit of terraforming and widen the mouth of this bay because I felt like it was a little too narrow and it would be a bit treacherous for boats coming in and out of here. So I'm just going to eat away at this little piece of land, and that makes everything a bit more suitable for the incoming and outgoing boat traffic. All right, and all of our actual port puzzle pieces have been placed down. And now I'm going to try something. I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but I'm going to come over to this area. And I am going to... Oh, actually, nope. We got to select our upgrades. And I'm going to build a couple of container cranes. Now, I know this is not a container port. This is not a civil cargo port. But I'm going to add a couple cranes anyways. Not sure how I feel about this yellow color. I know there's a bunch of color options for these cranes. I think probably like a maroonish red color might be more suitable. So I'm going to copy the color from this crane, paste it to this second one, and that looks much better. And now what I have to do is connect this path to the rest of the map. So I'm just going to draw a little connection over to kind of the main road heading into the main harbor of the city. And there we go, we're connected. And from this point on, we are going to establish a new cargo ship route. So I'm gonna go from this crane all the way to the exterior of the map and then loop back just like this. And now if I go into my transportation management window, we're gonna go under our boat lines, cargo, and then we have this shipping route, but I don't want any cargo ships to actually spawn in here. I've actually downloaded a US Navy warship vehicle, so instead of having cargo ships coming to and from the port area, we're actually going to have fully functional Navy ships. I mean, they act as cargo ships, but you get the point. So let's see how this is actually going to work. Now, I actually don't think anything's going to happen until we actually build out some cargo, some cargo spaces, warehouses, things like that. I don't think we're actually going to export any cargo right yet. But we'll keep an eye out, and potentially... some warships are going to start spawning from the edge of the map. By default, we should have 2 along this line. I don't think I'm going to establish the second line just yet. This crane is going to remain unused, just more for looks than anything else. So we'll see how this goes. Now, with that being built out, let's actually start to get a semi-functional port going. And I think this is what's going to cause the cargo ships to start spawning in. I want an intermodal train terminal so that we can get some cargo into this port and out via train. Now, again, this is not a cargo port. Typically, you wouldn't have any cargo containers in any sort of military installation, but we're going to kind of stretch reality. We're going to build an intermodal train terminal. So I'm going to line it up here as best I can. probably a little something like this. I think that should work out. Perfect. And to make this as efficient as humanly possible, I'm going to build a 2-lane one-way. Oh, actually, no. Let's do this. I'm going to do a 3-lane asymmetrical road that is going to cross over these tracks and head into, I guess, this new port section. And then we'll have our little 2-lane road tee off from there and then reconnect to the main road there. So then that will help kind of make traffic a little bit more efficient. And this is it for cargo space. We're not going to have any more cargo containers than this. I don't want this to resemble a cargo container port any more than just this. But what we will have plenty of are these large storage warehouses. We're going to go ahead and plop a few of these. Oh, actually, maybe a large one would look pretty cool. Yeah, all right. So I'm going to do a medium one like this. And then we'll have a large one along the main road like this. And then maybe we can fit a small one. Ooh, right here. Perfect. And I think that's just about what we're going to be able to fit. Maybe one more right here. Just going to dig into this mountain. Well, not really a mountain, but it's a little hill. And there we go. All right, what else do we need to plop down? So I've already plopped down all of my essential buildings: employee canteen, port security, emergency response. We also have a passenger terminal, which I am not going to plop down. This is not a civilian area. Oh, maybe a tank farm. Maybe we can get some crude oil flowing into this port. This would be more to fuel the actual ships than, you know, the transportation of oil. But I'm going to go ahead and... Oh, look at this. We already have our first cargo ship coming in, but it is a cargo ship and not a military vessel. What's going on here? So we have no cargo on board. All right, I'm just curious. I want to look into why this is not working. I'm going to go back into my transportation view. Cargo. Shipping route 1. Yeah, that should be all right. Maybe I'll tone this down to 1 vehicle. And there she is. Look at that. That is so cool. We actually have some military traffic running around the city. That is so cool. All right, is there any cargo on board? There are 0 tons, but I mean, this is kind of to be expected. We're gonna have to wait until this port actually ramps up fully, and then we should start to see some cargo flowing in. I'm just kind of curious. This is much larger than the default cargo vessel. So when it's docked like this, it doesn't clip into the harbor at all. And it looks like it's just fine turning around too. Okay, I was worried that it was just going to kind of plow into this cargo warehouse, but it looks okay. All right, perfect. What else can we plop down in our port area? It looks like that might be it. Everything else is kind of cargo related. We've done a tank farm. Maybe we'll do a couple of oil tanks right over here. All right, so the island is shaping up really, really nicely. Now it's time to pave over the entire thing before heading into the detailing portion of this episode. We've pretty much filled in all of the main buildings that we can fit in here without making this look like an actual cargo port. We have all of our essential buildings. We have our employee canteen, port security, emergency response building. We're not going to build a passenger terminal. No civilians are really allowed in here. And everything else is totally cargo related. So that means we're going to have to fill in all of these empty spaces with different props, and maybe we can zone in some industrial buildings as well in a few spots just to get some generic industry looking buildings. But let's start off by paving over this entire island. And there we go. Beautiful. This is by far the biggest slab of concrete on this entire map, and probably will be for forever. Okay, so now what I want to do is zone in some generic industry. Not going to go too crazy here. Maybe we'll just lay down some zones in a few key locations. Can we do this? Oh, okay, yeah, that doesn't mess with the existing buildings. But here, let's just dot some large industrial buildings here and there throughout this whole island. Now, hopefully we're going to get more warehouse type buildings instead of factory type buildings with smokestacks. I may have to resort to manually plopping some buildings. And yeah, unfortunately, it looks like we're getting some smokestacks. I think I'm just going to manually plop some buildings in this case. So using find it, we're going to go into our buildings, industry. We're going to remove our boat search. And now let's do like some big old 5x6 buildings just so we get some more warehouse looking buildings too. But I have a couple of ships to plop down before we do that. Let's at least plop down a couple of battleships. So I think if I do a search for boat, we should get, yes, we have a P-42 patrol boat, which is, you know, a bit of a smaller ship in comparison to the aircraft carrier. So we'll do one here. And this looks like an identical ship, except with a helipad, maybe, on the bottom. So we'll do one. Actually, should these boats be facing the other way? I feel like that might be the more logical thing in case there is some sort of incursion or something. You would want to immediately be able to head out to sea. So we're going to do that. We're going to rotate these ships 180 degrees, just like this. And I'm going to do a search for the word coast as well, because I have downloaded a Coast Guard ship. Now, I know the Coast Guard isn't exactly military, and I don't know if the Coast Guard would typically dock inside of a Navy base, but in this case, this is exactly what we're going to do. And it looks like this boat model is identical to these two. It's just that the skins look a little different. Yeah, they definitely are the same boat, just with a different paint job. So we don't really have a ton of choice when it comes to military vessels. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, City Skylines is a city builder. It's not an RTS game. So this is pretty much what we've got in terms of ship props. But I mean, this is already like really, really good. But there's another thing that we could do, and that is, if I do a search for F-18, we've got some little fighter jet props that we can populate our large aircraft carrier with. Now, I want to be careful where I put these props because I've caused this aircraft carrier to disappear on a number of occasions. So, you know what? I might even just keep this one F-18 where it's at. Now, not only do we have F-18s, ITSCon has also created the V-22 Osprey, which is significantly bigger than the F-18. I don't think this is to scale, but we're going to plop it anyways. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit it on the boat, but you know what? Right over here, I think, might be a pretty cool spot for a couple of these V-22s. So I'm going to plop one right here, one right there for now, and then we'll decorate the terrain underneath them. So we'll have like a helipad or something. We'll paint some lines on the ground. Another thing I'm almost forgetting is ITSCon has also created some hangars. Now, these look significantly better than these big old cargo warehouses. So I'm going to keep the small ones around, but I'm going to delete this large one. And instead, we're going to build a bunch of these hangars. So I'm going to line two of them up like this. And then what I would like to do is disconnect these from the road, and I would like to have a long connected hangar like this. Now, these buildings thankfully don't require any sort of road connection. So that means we can have a long hangar. Here, I'm going to remove one. I think that's a little too much, but 3 hangars in a row, just like that. That looks really, really cool. And I'm going to do one more on the very end. So I'm going to turn on road snapping one more time, and then actually, let's do 2 more, just like this. And that looks a lot more military. Now, what about these warehouses? They just look a little too clean. What if we can maybe tone this down into like a more grayish color? Or better yet, oh, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to recolor copy those colors, but maybe if we change this into kind of a brownish color, I'm going to copy this this color palette on this warehouse, and we're going to paste it. Yeah, that looks all right. Let's do the same color palette on all of these warehouses. That looks a lot better. Much more military related. This is looking like a true military installation now. Wow, this is so cool. Well, all of the main buildings have been placed down at this point. Now let's get into the more detailed propage. So we're gonna go into time-lapse mode for the next few minutes, and I'm just gonna paint this entire thing with a whole bunch of props, decorate it all nice and neat, and we'll get those lines painted down underneath our V22s as well. And it's gonna really add a level of realism to this whole thing. So let's get into it. And the first order is going to be plopping a bunch of helicopters and airplanes, because the Navy isn't all just about boats. It has a lot to do with helicopters and airplanes as well. So I'm going to turn this naval base into sort of an all-purpose base that includes a helicopter station. As you saw me plop down 3 Black Hawk helicopters right along the coast. They are ready to go at a moment's notice out to sea if they may need. So they're stationed just off the coast of the base. And also, I want this base to be sort of a logistical hub as well, which is why I'm laying down a spider web of railroad tracks heading into each directions. And this just makes it easier to transport goods throughout the base if they're coming in via rail. And another great thing about this military port is if there's any goods coming in via boat, they can be offloaded, quickly transferred onto a train, and then imported elsewhere to maybe another nearby military base. So I really want this to be a logistical hub, and it makes this Navy base very versatile. Now, after struggling with the search for a second there, it's kind of hard to find where all these props are hiding using the Find It tool. I'm going to plop down a bunch of M1 Abram tanks, and I'm going to plop them by the shore area to make it look like these may have just been imported from, maybe another military installation somewhere, and they're just waiting to be stored. And I'm quickly going to move on to another area in the port where I kind of forgot that we have a firefighting helicopter station. And I feel like this is just such a really cool addition to this area, because not only does it look cool and it kind of fits the whole military theme, it's actually very functional as well, because should we have a forest fire on, one of the nearby islands that's not accessible by car or by boat, we can simply fight those fires with a helicopter. Or if there's any other fires out in the wilderness that poses a threat to the nearby city, maybe on the outskirts of Stratford, those fires can easily be fought with these helicopters. And one thing I kind of like about the natural landscape of this area is we have a bit of a natural beach right by the base, a tiny little cove. And I really like this because I feel like soldiers who are stationed nearby can maybe just go for a little stroll on the beach, to unwind during their breaks, or, just to maybe go for a quick swim or something for fun. And I just felt like I should just leave the beach where it is, not touch it or modify it in any way. I kind of like that it's a part of the base. And now we're going to work a little bit more on the infrastructure side of things. I'm going to lay down a whole bunch of seawalls around this whole thing by adding a bunch of boulders. You know, we need to fight coastal erosion, and these rock seawalls are probably the best way to do that. It's a cheap, quick way to do it for sure. And initially I was going to draw my own helipads using, you know, maybe some different paint props and things. But I found these pre-made helipads and, you know, they're a little small, but I think they work pretty good. So that's what we're going to go with for these helicopter stations dotted throughout the base. And now we have this little hill just outside the base, and I debated flattening this out and making it a part of the base, but I kind of like having it there. It kind of blends the base into a bit of the natural landscape. And it also creates a mini retreat area for the soldiers who are stationed here, who, again, if the beach isn't really their thing, instead they can go for a walk around these trails and maybe just enjoy the sights of the bay and just kind of unwind a little bit without having to go very far from the base. And plus, having a little bit of a nature feature within the base itself can maybe serve as a training ground, you know, to go do a workout or to do any sort of drills. I can't see any reason not to have a little bit of nature within the base. And although we can say this base looks amazing, I mean, it's awesome, I felt like it was looking a little too clean, a little too refined. So I'm gonna dirty it up real good with these awesome pavement props by Sully, and we're gonna make it look like it's properly used and lived in. And I'm also going to add some tire marks in just a moment all over the base, just to give off the impression that, you know, people actually work here, they live here. This is a busy area. A lot of things going on. And lastly, there are a number of props created by ItsCon that we have not plopped yet, and those include things like these pallets that I'm just going to plaster all over the port area, and also these Humvee Jeeps. I'm going to build a number of those all over the base, and although this is a very small detail, a very small prop, I find that just having these Jeeps dotted all over the base, this is really what gives off the impression this is a base. I mean, apart from the boats, of course, the aircraft carrier is kind of hard to miss, but just having a bunch of Jeeps and military vehicles dotted around the base, it really makes this whole thing come alive, and you know, it looks like everything is functional. And that's pretty well it as far as detailing goes. Let's jump back into live play and we'll go over some final things. We got one more boat that I almost forgot to plop down. This one is apart from all the other ships that we plopped. It's not actually a prop because this boat actually floats. So I'm gonna go ahead in here and just plop it in the middle of the bay, and bloop, it just bobs right back up to the surface. And this boat is really, really cool. It almost has like a stealthy profile. Would probably have a pretty small radar signature. And it looks really, really cool. So I think I'm going to leave that one right where it is. It looks like it's just kind of leaving the bay. And why don't we plop maybe one more identical boat along the shoreline here? We have just enough room for a medium-sized boat to be docked right up against the shoreline like this. And that looks super cool. And now there's one last thing that we have to do before wrapping up this episode, and that is to get our intermodal train terminal up and running. So we're going to go into our train menu here, and we're going to establish a new cargo railway route from the intermodal train station all the way to the exterior of the map and back. And I gotta be honest, I'm a little scared about this one because I don't know how much traffic this is gonna spawn. Are we going to begin having super terrible traffic issues like we are over by the oil depot. Is that what's going to happen here? I don't know. We're just going to have to let the simulation play out, and we'll see in a little bit what happens. And while we wait for the simulation to do its thing, we're going to move on to phase 2 of this project, which is building housing for the soldiers who may be stationed nearby. So we're going to be building a small master planned community just outside the base, and it's going to provide sufficient housing for all of the employees working at the base. Now, of course, there is plenty of housing in Eastport and, well, I guess Stratford for those who dare to commute across the Bay Bridge every morning. But we're also going to build a planned community just outside the base, and I think I have chosen just the right location. And it's going to require moving these train tracks. And now the inspiration for this little housing complex is from a place called Shannon Park in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I have to use old satellite imagery as this place has since been demolished, but this used to be, well, exactly what we're doing here in game. It used to be a housing complex for the workers and soldiers and just anybody who's working at the Halifax Naval Port. And I'm loosely going to base it on that. So we're going to have, a collection of medium density buildings and some single family homes as well, and pretty much every type of service that a small community would need. So schools, hospitals, all that kind of stuff. All right, that already looks way better. Oh, cool, we have a little transition piece over here. I didn't even do that. Perfect, and look at this. It opens up this entire area for our little community now. So now I'm just gonna draw a road. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna flatten out this hill. We're gonna bring it right down to about the same level as our tracks. I just want to make this a little easier on myself. I don't really feel like dealing with any challenging terrain today. But over on the other side of the tracks, I am simply going to smooth this out. And that already looks pretty natural. Nothing wrong with that. And then we're going to bring this road inland a bit more. So this is kind of going to be the main road that is running through this whole region. And I'm just basically going to draw a straight line like this. And then from this point, we're going to have our main entrance into this little community. Right to about there. And instead of having, some major roads and stuff running through here, I'm just going to do some small paths. And there we are. This is going to be the basic road layout. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And okay, it looks like we have one train casualty and another one, which I think is going in the opposite direction that it was before. I think that train was actually coming in, but I'm not sure. All right, so now let's do some grass strips instead of parking. And with this being kind of a planned community to serve the base, we're going to have all of our required amenities, hospitals, schools, everything that anybody may need. So we're going to do a modern medical clinic. So this is a really tiny building, and I'm going to plop it right at the entrance of this community. All right, this actually looks really cool. This is exactly the vibe that I was going for this community. This style of buildings, kind of like, 1950s kind of architecture. What kind of upgrades can we do here? We can do some additional clinics. Oh, this is a separate building. And we can do a specialized treatment wing. But for now, I think I'm just going to keep this really small. And if we require any upgrades, we'll apply them as needed. Same thing for schools. We're going to do a small elementary school. And, well, this is a bit of a bigger building. I might... Oh, actually, yeah, I'm going to do that right by the water. What better place to have a school than right by the water? I know this school is instantly going to get filled up, so we're going to build a gymnasium. Oh, geez, this is a huge add-on, but we got the room, so we're going to tack it onto the side just like so, and we're also going to add an extension wing. I'm going to try to do without the extension wing for now because it just doesn't really fit in this spot. But I am, however, going to scooch everything over a little bit in this direction. And that will give us just enough room for a parking lot. I say plenty of parking, but what I meant was just a little bit of parking. Beautiful. All right. Fire station. Same thing. Let's do a... Let's see here. Do we have a community firehouse? This kind of has the same look as the medical clinic. This building I'm going to plop a little bit farther out. And, well, not really that far out. Just a bit farther up the road. And what about a high school? What do we have for a modern-looking high school? You know what? I'm not going to do a high school. I am going to send the kids off to somewhere nearby in Eastport. But elementary school for sure. And what else? Police. Do we really need a police station within a military base? We might as well. Do we have a modern police station? Let's just go for the small police station. And same thing, I'm going to plop this one a little bit outside of the community, right over here along the main road. And I guess it can serve the areas around it. And we can't forget to add a little park, so let's do a small playground. Although the school already kind of has a playground, so let's plop one on the other side of town, right over here. And then we'll do a dog park as well. And then maybe just a small park right outside the school, just like so. All right, so we have all of our required services. Now let's provide the housing. And I know exactly which buildings I am going to include here. So we're going to go into Find It. We're going to drill down into the French pack. And lo and behold, these are exactly the buildings that I had in mind. So we're going to just plaster the area with these buildings. Just like this. They're all going to be identical. And we're really going to make this into sort of a proper military complex. But I don't only want to have large apartment buildings. Well, let's do one more right here. I want to have single family homes as well, because every military base I have visited have had small single family homes up for rent as well. They're all identical for the most part. They're all very small and cramped. And for our single family homes, I know just the thing. I love these little bungalows. So we're just going to plaster this whole area with a bunch of these, kind of equally spaced out. There, and I think that should do it. Now, normally a military base housing complex would be a little bigger than this, but I think this should do the trick. It's just kind of a representation of what these can typically look like. And look at this. We also have boosted up our commercial demand. That is really exciting to see. I don't know how long this is going to last, but hopefully it lasts us just long enough so we can have a little corner store within the base. So let's check out what this is going to look like. Perfect. Look at that. We have a little fast food restaurant, a little canteen, and there we go. I think this little base should set us up for the future. Oh, we have a little bit of room here, actually. Let's add a couple more houses. And you know what? I feel like we can maybe squeeze in one or two more of these houses out by the water. So where Where do we do this from? Perfect. I'm loving this. This is a wonderful little community. Now, there's one thing that's really important to do, and if we don't do it soon, we're going to have problems. I have to go throughout every single one of these properties and lock their building levels because we don't want these apartment complexes to start upgrading and then they look different. And then you can really tell that they're French because when they reach level, 3 and 4, they start getting those classic French roofs. These buildings look like they could fit in like any kind of city, North American or not. And I also have to apply the same building level lock to all of these single family homes because I'm afraid if they upgrade, they are going to get a different appearance. But luckily this community is not super huge, so it'll only take a minute or so to do all of these houses. So I'm going to skip ahead and then we'll get to the conclusion of this episode. All right, there we go, guys. Everything's detailed up and everything is locked, so nothing should change here indefinitely. The base is all detailed up, fully functional. Things are working so far, so good. The rail depot seems to be operational, and we do actually have a bunch of stored materials here in the base, which is great. All right, well, that concludes this episode. This was a fun one. I really enjoyed building out this base. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching me build it. And if you did, make sure to hit that like button. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're not already to get notified of any future uploads. And if you're interested in supporting the channel even further, consider becoming a YouTube member or a patron. And to all of my channel supporters, I thank you so much for your contribution. It really does mean a lot. And also to my regular viewers, it really means a lot that you're simply watching my videos. I mean, it's amazing. So many of you enjoy my content and watch my videos. So thank you times a million. So that's it for me. Until the next episode, take care.